All right, thanks, Pollux. Thank you, Council, for this opportunity. I was really excited when I saw your journal being created, and even though I didn't submit in time for the first issue, I really enjoyed the concept. So best of luck in the future, and thanks for running this reading today. Fellow contributors, I loved your works, so I'm really looking forward to diving into them and seeing where your kind of publishing leads you. So this is my poem, Adoption by Suffer Level. A1, Breakthrough or Beginner. I am Maria. I am from America. I am from Korea. My family is from America. My family is from Korea. I am from Korea, but my family is from America. I am American. Well, I am Korean, but I am American. My family comes from Italy. I come from Korea. They do not live in Italy. They do not live in Korea. No, my family lives in America. No, my father is not Korean. No, I do not have Korean relatives. No, I do not know my Korean relatives. A2, way stage or elementary. I live in Myrtle Beach. My hometown is Leominster. My birth city is Jinhae. Now it is called Jinhaeku. I went to Korea. It is lovely. I came to the USA to live with my family. Every day I think about Korea. I think about visiting. I think about living and loving and leaving. I think about a poem I read. I feel sad. Every day I meet new people. They ask questions. B1, threshold or intermediate. I made my pain into a passable conversation. I read classic literature with a glossary. I painted my feelings in feelings colors, flags colors, black, red, white, blue. I started to combine, mix paints, iterate on sentence structure. I impressed you with some vocabulary while falling down on grammar. I considered the words I cannot spell in any language, the unique sounds that expelled themselves from my ancestral mouths. That nameless sensation, that thing you lack the words for, that exists. What you think of as language is just a wound. B2, vantage or upper intermediate. I have not yet achieved this level on the back of my heritage, not yet let my ancestors carry me up over this hill. I see the cliff ahead of me, the promised view, the just rewards. I see an Airbnb in my great-grandfather's hometown, cherry blossoms and salt water. In hypotheticals, if I had been born in any other place, I would not yet have traced the lines of my bones tremoring under the earth. Had I known either more or less than what I know exactly now, I could never have adopted so many other ugly-duckling languages to float in the pond in my hometown's neighborhood. I could have gone fishing under the ice, but those swans circling around my identity, Beto, Signo, Hakucho, there's no friggin' swans here. C1, effective operational proficiency or advanced. We are all crying out for something. We are all cries in crisis. Call us humans. We none of us have never cried. No one crystallizes with their crystal eyes a lack of cry. I too cry over the past. I cry inside a happy moment to watch it die. I cry with the anguish of family, the hurricane of my history, the jet lag rising fast within me, echo of the places in me, passport to the trauma in me, generations spilling, tears within me. Bitter-tongued, I taste these crystal droplets and I cry. C2, mastery or proficiency. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. I just love this poem so much. I think the most captivated thing about this poem is its ending. Like, I remember the first time I read it in our submissions, I saw the ending. I was like, I need to read this whole thing again. I need to like build up to it again. I need to experience it again. And I'm sure that all our readers and editors felt the same way. And the coexistence of like devastation and possibility that it leaves the reader with is exactly why I chose your poem as the last written piece of issue 2. And I was wondering if is level C2 something that you or your speaker anticipates in the near future, or is it something that is not fully attainable in your mind as a reconnecting adoptee?
Hmm. Well, that's a very difficult question. So this poem came from a lot of places, first from my adoption, of course. But ever since then, I've been really interested in other languages. And I also work as an English teacher online to adults who are learning a second language. So I have the opportunity to engage with a lot of different languages. I've learned different languages for research purposes, like during undergrad. And being obsessed with level and being obsessed with progress is something that I think is kind of like part of our late capitalist thinking. There's this idea that you're super lucky to be a native speaker of English. And there's also this desire to achieve a higher level to communicate. But one thing that I've been researching a lot is adoption, especially transnational adoption. Even though I was adopted at a very young age from South Korea, I started speaking kind of late. And I realize now that it's because all of my development as a baby was in Korean. And all of a sudden, there was this sea change where I touched down in America, and all of a sudden everything swapped from Korean to English. So there's been some research about adoptees' language abilities and development. And there's also this sense of being completely left behind or alienated by the fact that even though my native language is English, it's not really English, you know? So I've always had this block around relearning Korean and reclaiming my heritage that I think is really seen in this overt struggle to encounter language. So when I wrote this poem, I was thinking about the conversations that I have at these different levels when I learn a language for the first time, trying to explain my adoption without knowing the word for being adopted or knowing how to conjugate it or even hint at it. And then the poem just really opened up to me from there. So as far as achieving C2 proficiency, it's well known that C2 is almost impossible in some ways for language learners to achieve. And one of the things that I wanted to get at in this poem was the ineffability of trauma, of identity, the way that words just fail you. So I wanted to end the poem by having C2 be effectively just the blank space where I'm still trying to fill in that gap with my poems, with explorations into my own identity, with learning more about Korea and being Korean. But in some way, something has been irrevocably kind of lacunaed. So that was where that impulse came from.
Thank you so much. I what you said about how words can fail us is really going to stay with me, I think. That's something that I've definitely been thinking about a lot as well. Definitely. I think the conversation about multilinguality definitely very often takes place in the possibility that it can offer us. And that's definitely like the selling point of multilinguality in a lot of places. But I do think that where words fail us is also something that should be explored much more. And yeah, thank you for bringing that up. And I'm also interested in what you said about how mastery, proficiency, all those kind of things come from a like capitalist notion of like clear categorization. So I like to ask another question relating to that,
Sure.
because we of course know that this categorization draws from like literal fluency in a language, but throughout the poem, we are shown other things that the speaker yearns to understand or master as well, such as quote, living and loving and leaving, unquote. So, and of course, language is just never simply about the vocabulary or its grammatical rules. So what would you say level C2 would entail for somebody who does achieve it?
Oh, when I meet students, what I hear a lot is that they want to speak exactly like a native speaker. And yet we see native speakers who are ungrammatical, who maybe aren't well educated, who are illiterate or semi-literate, which are huge things that are problems in this country that we're struggling with today. Um, but also I think is prevalent around the world. If you look at literacy statistics around the world, there's no country that's like, wow, that's great. Even countries that we stereotypically think of as fairly high achieving in education, like South Korea, have a lot of literacy issues, a lot of people who got left behind. And I think that even for me, sometimes my struggle with Korean is my own fear and self-doubt, because I know that I'll never be a native speaker. I know that even if I get really, really, really good and my pronunciation is great, it's not my native language. So to me, I think C2 is kind of like the limit that we approach, but we can never achieve. It's like the math problem that we're always trying to solve when we grapple with language and communication. And sometimes I feel that, okay, that's just enough. We have to be excited about ourselves and say, look, I learned so much. This is enough. I am enough. Just like in our capitalist society, right? We just have to say, okay, there's no point to all of this striving. I'm happy with what I've already achieved. I don't need to always be thinking about how imperfect I am. But to me, this is a matter of self-esteem. And it's something that I try to instill in my students, as you don't need to be perfect to get the degree you want, or to get the job you want, or to live in another language. I see examples of that every day, and it really inspires me. So I hope to someday turn that kindness and charity on my own self.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. That seems like such a great mindset to just have in language learning, because as you said, even if you know all the rules, there's always going to be things in language that are weird, like idioms and stuff. I think that people think I'm a native English speaker, but sometimes I'll just say idioms that do not exist in English, and they'll be like, "What are you saying?" Right? So I definitely yeah, I think that learning language from a person with a mindset like you must be an amazing experience. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing with us today. Do you have anything else that you would like to say in this space?
No, just
No.
that my mother's here, and I'm so happy that she's here. So that's it. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Maria.